everyone and welcome back to another video where today I want to talk a little bit about a leak from a sort of infamous leaker basically saying that Doctor Who at Disney is dead. However, they are shopping it around to other streaming services and a deal is about to be reached. Now obviously, like with all leaks and scoops, take this with a grain of salt, and also we're going to be going over who said this, what their track record is, what I think about it, and what the future could hold with this stuff. But before we get into it, do me a teeny tiny little favour and click that subscribe button. It'd be greatly appreciated. We are trying to get to 30,000 subscribers. We do regular Doctor Who content here on the channel, so any support would be greatly appreciated. But let's dive right in. So to give some context, the leaker Daniel Richman, or Daniel RPK, made this tweet on the 28th of May 2025. The original ending for Doctor Who Season 2 before the reshoots was the Doctor, Ruby, Belinda, etc. all having a big party. Think Amy and Rory's wedding, everyone's dancing, the Blinks is a DJ, Susan is seen overwatching them from afar, which would have been the cliffhanger leading into Season 3. Now, initially, I was a little bit kind of hesitant to believe this report for the simple fact that A, he tweeted this after we'd seen the Disney Plus image that is now famous of a scene that never made it to shoot, of Ncuti and Verada dancing in a club. So I kind of thought, maybe he was just making up this scene as kind of like, guesswork basically based on that Disney Plus image. And obviously I know that Daniel RPK has gotten stuff right to do with other franchises before, but obviously his track record with Doctor Who is not as known, so I was kind of hesitant to believe this report. However, the official account for Captain Poppy's actor for the Space Babies has confirmed this. The TikTok account of Captain Poppy, ran by the mum, has confirmed that shortly before Saturday's finale, scooper Daniel Richman wrote, "The original ending of Doctor Who Season 2 before the reshoots was the Doctor, Ruby, Belinda, etc. all having a big party, think Amy and Rory's wedding, everyone's dancing and the Blinks is DJ. Susan is seen watching them from afar, which would have been the cliffhanger leading into a Season 3. So this kind of substantiates Daniel Richman's reports here, because we've got an actor, or at least the mother of a young actor who was on set, and likely Poppy would have been featured in the ending, basically confirming this report. And in the TikTok replies, she hearts comments saying, "So was this actually legit if you're posting it?" To which she hearts. Someone says, "Yep," to which they say, "Damn," and then they say, "Double damn." So yeah, essentially, mother of the baby actress of Sienna, Captain Poppy, has basically confirmed this ending to be accurate to what she understood, which is very interesting. It makes me wonder if you can send a cease and desist to a baby. But yeah, so it essentially confirms that this ending that's been speculated for a while is the accurate ending for this episode. And the reason I hadn't covered this leaked or supposed ending of Doctor Who Season 2 that was originally proposed is because I wasn't sure whether it was accurate or not at the time it was originally reported, which is why I held off. But now we have confirmation from an actor, or at least the mother of an actor, that yes, this scene was originally filmed and that was going to be how the series ends. And so this leads us into this new report from Daniel Richman, Daniel RPK, who is saying that the Doctor Who deal is, quote, dead at Disney, but there may still be hope for the series to return. According to a new rumour, Disney has indeed decided to move on from Doctor Who, with the studio's deal with the BBC described as being dead. However, there's still some hope for the show moving forward. When the BBC teamed up with Disney Plus to co-produce Doctor Who, the future looked bright for the long-running sci-fi series. Coming off the back of Chris Chibnall's divisive run as showrunner, which saw Jodie Whittaker step into the TARDIS, a cash injection to give it a big budget felt like the right move for a property running on fumes. Helping matters would be a new streaming home capable of bringing Doctor Who to global audiences. The return of Russell T Davies as lead creative, he rebooted the show in the mid-2000s, to great success, was similarly celebrated. Unfortunately, the series has struggled to strike a chord with new and returning fans. Davies has been accused of relying on too heavy-handed woke themes, and newly introduced concepts like bi-generation have frustrated diehards. Ncuti Gatwa did an admirable job as the Doctor, but with limited screen time in Season 1 due to other acting commitments, it feels like he never fully established himself as the Time Lord before passing the mantle to Billie Piper in the divisive Season 2 finale. Davies is thought to have had a 3-season plan, but with the low ratings for Season 1, we repeatedly heard that it would now hinge on how well Season 2 performed. The numbers didn't vastly improve, so that means no Christmas special this year, and as of now, Season 3 isn't in active production. Scooper Daniel Richman has proven himself a reliable source for Doctor Who intel in recent weeks, and shared an update on the show's future that brings both good news and bad news. Doctor Who is only dead at Disney, he reports via sfgazette.com, but there are active talks to revive it elsewhere and things are looking promising. This suggests that the BBC will continue partnering with another platform, and the likes of Prime Video and Netflix are surely in the mix. Whether Davis will return or will get another reboot remains to be seen, though that cliffhanger with Piper will need to be addressed somehow. Either way, we'd expect some big changes. In related news, the mother of a young actress who played Poppy has confirmed the validity of a recently leaked alternate ending for the show using a screenshot of Richman's report from a comicbook.com article. And then that's basically exactly what we just talked about, where the mother of the actress who plays Captain Poppy confirms that that ending was accurate. That is the ending that they filmed for Season 2 prior to Ncuti leaving. So, based on all of this, I do have slightly more faith in Daniel Richman as a source, at least for this. It is worth saying that I believe he did previously say that the show would be canned, which obviously now his tune has changed because he is now saying that the Disney deal is dead, but they are shopping it around to other streaming services, and it looks like talks are going well for that, which obviously does represent a change in tune. I suppose one could say that if he does have genuine insider information, it could be that the original plan was to, axe it for a bit, but then essentially he found out that there were more talks going on with other streaming services, which kind of evolved the narrative potentially. But obviously, having that ending confirmed is very interesting because it makes me wonder what they would have done with Susan going forwards, because I don't really imagine that you can bring back Susan now. I just think it'd be weird to do it with all the Billie Piper stuff going on, and it does feel like a shame, but it also suggests that Susan wasn't planned to be resolved in Season 2. Obviously, she was planned to make another appearance, and obviously this makes sense given that we've seen Carol Ann Ford in Unleashed in a different costume. And I can't believe we missed out on the Vlinx DJ at a party. But part of me does just wish they'd have done this ending and left it open-ended for the future, even if you had the Doctor regenerate off-screen and come back in the style of Christopher Eccleston. I do think that that would have been a healthier end for the show. Obviously, I understand wanting to give Gatwa a big send-off and all that sort of stuff, but I think you can tell the Reality War wasn't designed as his final episode, and I think the episode does suffer from that. I'm not saying that that means that all the creative decisions Reality War makes are, excused, because I do think that even with the difficult circumstances, I still wouldn't have chosen to make some of the decisions that they did choose to make, particularly with regards to Belinda's character and the return of Billie Piper. However, it is also probably worth saying that if this was the original ending, which is seeming exceedingly likely that it was, it seems fairly apparent to me that the episode that we got is very different from the episode that they originally envisioned. And I don't think that it was all part of Russell's plan to bring back Billie at the end of Season 2. I just don't think that that was ever part of the original plan. And as I've said before, when I was on set, they were all under the impression that Ncuti would do 3. That was the impression that I was given when I was there. So make of that what you will. But the other interesting part of this is, of course, obviously the Disney deal being dead, which, even if this report turns out to be, inaccurate or incorrect, would not surprise me. I think if the Disney deal was to continue in any form, we would have heard something by now. Obviously, I know they said that no decision will be made until after Season 2, but I just think that if they were that eager, we'd have heard something, at the very least, as soon as Season 2 had aired, if not sooner. It seems to me that Disney aren't particularly enthusiastic about, renewing this deal, renewing this partnership. But that leaves the question of who else can take up the deal? Who else can take up the Doctor Who rights internationally, the streaming rights internationally, the distribution rights? And there are a few candidates. Interestingly, I remember when they were talking about the initial Disney deal, that there were a few streamers that were interested in picking up the Doctor Who rights. And so potentially it could go to one of those. Obviously, the main candidates in my mind would probably be the likes of HBO, Amazon Prime, Netflix, and I guess maybe Paramount. I personally wouldn't go with Paramount just because I don't really think they have the mainstream appeal of the others. HBO would make some level of sense because they've had the rights to revived series Doctor Who for a very long time and have that existing working relationship with the BBC for other shows as well. Netflix is a funny one because it's still probably the most popular streaming service out there, but they are very eager to cancel shows if they're not immediately working, and I feel like if we went with Netflix, we would essentially just end up in the same position we are currently in, where we're having to shop it around in a couple of years. That's one thing I would stipulate if I was in these negotiations. I'd basically be like, look, if we're going to do this, we want, like, you know, a 5-year contract, a 5-year deal for Doctor Who moving forwards. Otherwise, you know, we're just going to be in this same position in another 2 years. I don't think it's healthy for the show to constantly be bouncing between different distributors internationally. I think my preference would probably be Amazon Prime Video, because Amazon is a massive company with so much money, and Prime Video is such a small part of their business that, like, to them it doesn't really, like, matter how much money Prime Video makes. Prime Video is largely the main thing that people subscribe to it for isn't even the video part, it's the Prime shipping. The content they have on Amazon Prime is basically just a cool bonus. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love, you know, a lot of it. I love The Boys and stuff like that. But I think by going with a company like Amazon, yeah, it might be a bit weird because the Doctor is very heavily anti-capitalist, but I guess you could say that with any of these companies, that they're all very big corporations. But also, owing to the fact that they have so much money from other revenue streams, they probably would just be happy to just put a little bit of money into Doctor Who each year to keep it running, because for them it would be like basically an accounting error on their books, you know, that the number would be so small compared to what they make via other things. So I think for me, Prime would probably be the best candidate, in my opinion. HBO would probably be second because they have the streaming rights to Doctor Who 2005 onwards, at least in America, I believe, probably Canada as well. I'm not really sure. And then probably Netflix and then Paramount. If I had to, like, rank, you know, the ones that it could end up on, that's kind of what I'm thinking at the moment. The interesting thing about it, though, is that if this report is to be believed, and essentially if we end up with a situation where the show continues on yet another international streaming service, what does that mean for, like, the 2 Gatwa seasons? Do they remain Disney Plus exclusive, leading to further fracturing of the Doctor Who library internationally? Would they be willing to buy the rights out for the 2 Gatwa seasons from Disney in order to complete the catalogue? And if not, would we be resetting the numbering again? Because obviously a big part of that initiative, you know, resetting it from series 14 to season 1 was for Disney's benefit, because it looks a bit weird if you're starting a new show and you're streaming a new show starting with series 14. So that's probably why they changed it to season 1. But if we're going to another streaming service, you know, another new streaming service, do you reset the numbering again? Do you reset it back and just call it series 16 and just pretend like the other two were series 14 and 15? That's a whole thing that I'm not really sure how you would navigate. It does get a little bit messy. I think it does get a little bit messy. The thing I am glad about, if this report is true, which again, you know, grain of salt and all that, is that it's highly likely that the show will continue without Disney, which I'm glad to see. And I have to be honest, even though I think the high profile of Disney was beneficial just in terms of, like, you know, eyeballs and reach in terms of, like, international distribution, I can't say I saw a massive difference between the season 1 and season 2 that were co-funded by Disney and the 60th anniversary specials, which weren't co-funded by Disney. They were a Badwell Studios BBC joint. I don't think the difference between those two eras, or like those two runs of episodes, is that drastic, because as far as I understand it, they were filming the 60th before the Disney deal was signed, and the Disney team were basically going to the filming of the 60th to kind of see if it was anything they liked. And, like, maybe they chucked a bit of extra money in for, like, special effects, because obviously the 60th would be on Disney Plus as well, but even still, I didn't notice a massive difference between that and season 1 and 2, really. So, yeah, it's all very interesting. I think my main stipulation would be in any new deal that it has to go on for at least more than 2 years. We cannot do this situation every 2 years where we're wondering if the show will continue, or whether, like, said streaming service, whoever they end up picking, will pick it up. I think you've got to make a deal for, like, 5 years or so in order for it to, like, be worth the while of the fan base and allow the show to have some level of security. I think it is also worth saying, though, with this report is that Daniel Richman did claim that there would be an 8th Doctor spin-off, which employees of Bad Wolf themselves were making fun of. So, again, I will take this report with a grain of salt, but it wouldn't surprise me if this is what was happening. But let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. Whatever your thoughts are, be sure to like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you later.